So, guys, if you remember, we talked about ESPN's latest wide receiver rankings, where CeeDee Lamb was recognized as one of the NFL's top receivers. But now, a former Cowboys player has come out with a completely different opinion, making some surprising comments about Lamb that have quickly sparked a lot of debate among Cowboys fans and across the NFL. The reaction has been so strong that CeeDee Lamb even responded himself. So, let's break down exactly what was said, why it's creating so much controversy, and what Lamb had to say in response. What's up, Cowboys Nation? Welcome to the NFL Playbook Cowboys. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So, let's get right into it. Adam Pacman Jones got on his podcast and flat out said he would not put CeeDee Lamb in his top 10 at all, not even close. He came out and said Lamb is not better than Diggs, meaning Stefon Diggs, and he is not better than Higgins either. And I'm sitting here like, okay, hold on. Let's actually look at what we are talking about before we start throwing out takes like that. Because when a former player gets on his own podcast and starts questioning whether one of the most productive receivers in football even belongs in that conversation, that is going to get noticed, and it did. Now look, I get it. Everybody is entitled to their opinion, and Pac-Man has definitely earned the right to talk football after the career he had. But when he got to Lamb's name specifically, he switched his whole tone, and that is what caught everybody's attention. Because when you look at what CeeDee Lamb has actually put on tape over the last few seasons, it is hard to find a receiver in this league who has been more consistent. Go back to his monster 2023 season, the one where he set the Cowboys franchise record with 1,749 receiving yards and hauled in 135 catches. That season earned him first-team All-Pro honors, which, by the way, only happens for the 2 or 3 best receivers in the entire NFL that year. That is not a small thing. That puts him in the same conversation as the very best receivers in the league, guys nobody is questioning at all. And it's not like that was a one-year fluke either. In 2024, Lamb still went out and grabbed 101 catches for nearly 1,200 yards while dealing with a nagging shoulder injury for basically half the season. He gutted through it and still produced. Last year, he battled a high ankle sprain that cost him time and a concussion, and even with all of that, the guy still earned his 5th straight Pro Bowl selection, tying Michael Irvin for the most Pro Bowl nods by a wide receiver in Cowboys history. 5 Pro Bowls, 1 All-Pro season, and he is still only entering his prime years. That is the resume we are talking about here, and that is the resume Pac-Man is trying to tell us does not belong near the top. And here's the thing. If you actually want to compare Lamb to the 2 names Pac-Man brought up, the numbers do not really back up that argument. Higgins is a solid receiver, no doubt about it, but he has never touched the kind of volume Lamb has put up over the last 3 seasons. And he has never carried an offense the way Lamb has carried this one. Stefon Diggs has had a great career too. Nobody is denying that, but even Diggs himself would probably tell you that a guy putting up back-to-back seasons of over 1,000 receiving yards along with multiple Pro Bowl trips deserves to be in that conversation. So, when Pac-Man says Lamb is not better than either of those 2 guys, it is just not something the stats support, and that is the biggest issue people have with the take. So naturally, this did not sit right with Cowboys fans, and it did not sit right with Lamb either. Once word got back to him about what was being said, CeeDee Lamb responded directly, and honestly, it was short and to the point. He basically said he does not even want to be on anybody's list at this point. And look, I get why he feels that way. When you have put in the work Lamb has put in year after year being the guy defenses game plan around, and then somebody comes along and tries to discredit that just to get a reaction, it makes sense that he is over it. He does not need validation from a podcast tape to know what he brings to that offense every single Sunday. Now here's the thing that really gets me about this whole situation. Before Pac-Man even brought up Lamb, he was actually going through a bunch of other names on that same list and honestly agreeing with most of them. He co-signed the guys at the very top without any hesitation, said a few others clearly deserved their spot too. So, he clearly was not just hating on the whole list for the sake of hating. It was specifically when he got to Lamb's name that he decided to change his tune. And that is what made a lot of people raise their eyebrows, because if you are fine with almost everybody else, but you specifically have a problem with the Cowboys guy, you have to ask what is really going on there. And I think a lot of that comes down to some old noise around who is really the #1 receiver in Dallas between Lamb and George Pickens. That debate has been going on ever since Pickens got traded to the Cowboys, and I think some people are still trying to use that to knock Lamb down a peg, like they have to pick a side. But that is not how it works. This is not an either-or situation. You can have two elite receivers on the same team, and Dallas has proven that all last season with both guys putting up big numbers. If anything, this Pacman situation feels like an extension of that same argument, just dressed up as a ranking discussion. People wanted to use Pickens' breakout year to say Lamb is no longer the guy, and now that both of them are getting recognized at a high level. Some folks still cannot accept that a team can have two #1 receivers at the same time. Now, I also want to bring up something else, because it matters when we are talking about credibility here. This is not the first time Pacman has made headlines for reasons that have nothing to do with football analysis. Just last year, he was arrested down in Covington after an altercation at a bar, and he ended up pleading guilty to multiple charges, including assault on an officer. That came only a couple of years after he was pulled off a flight and arrested at the airport for similar reasons. And honestly, that has kind of become a pattern with him at this point. One incident after another making headlines that have nothing to do with the game. I am not saying a man cannot have an opinion on football because of his past. Everybody deserves the chance to move forward. But when you are out here trying to discredit one of the most consistent receivers in the league with just a gut reaction and no real stats behind it, people are going to push back. And that is exactly what happened here. Because at the end of the day, football is about production, and CeeDee Lamb's production speaks for itself. This is a guy who has caught over 100 passes in 3 different seasons already in his career. This is a guy who has gone over 1,000 receiving yards in every season except his rookie year, and even then he was still close. This is a guy who defenses have to account for on every single snap, because if you leave him one-on-one, he is going to make you pay for it. That is not a snub kind of receiver. That is a top-of-the-league kind of receiver, and the people who actually watch film for a living clearly agree with that too. You do not accidentally put up numbers like that year after year. That comes from route running, film study, and a level of consistency that a lot of receivers around this league simply do not have. So honestly, I think this whole thing says more about the guys making the noise than it does about Lamb himself. It is easy to sit behind a microphone and throw out a take that is going to get clicks and reactions. It is a lot harder to go out there every single Sunday and actually perform at an elite level against the best cornerbacks in the world. And that is exactly what Lamb has been doing since the day he stepped into this league. Now let's flip it back to the Cowboys side of things for a second, because I think this whole situation actually shines a light on something bigger. Having Lamb and Pickens both playing at an elite level gives Dak Prescott 2 legitimate #1 options to throw to, and that is something most teams in this league would kill for. Defenses cannot just focus all their attention on one guy anymore, because if you double up on Lamb, Pickens is going to eat, and if you try to take away Pickens, Lamb is going to make you regret it. That kind of receiver duo is rare, and it is one of the biggest reasons a lot of people are excited about what this offense can do this year. You look around the league, and most teams are lucky to have one receiver who forces defensive coordinators to change their whole game plan. Dallas has 2, and that is before you even factor in the tight ends and running backs also getting involved in this passing attack. When defenses have to spread themselves that thin, mistakes happen, and this offense is built to take advantage of every single one of them. That is the kind of firepower opposing coordinators are losing sleep over heading into this season, and honestly, that is a much bigger story than one guy's opinion on a podcast. And I think that is the part that gets lost in all this drama. Instead of celebrating the fact that Dallas has 2 receivers good enough to be considered among the very best in the league, we are stuck talking about whether one guy on a podcast thinks Lamb deserves respect or not. Meanwhile, the people who actually watch film for a living, they already know what Lamb brings to the table. Look, I understand podcasts need content and controversy gets clicks. I am not naive to that. But there is a difference between having a genuine football opinion and just saying something wild because you know it is going to get shared around. And honestly, that is exactly what happened here. The second Lamb's name got dragged into this, the clip started circulating everywhere, Cowboys fans started reacting, and now here we are talking about it too. That is just how it works these days. But at some point, the production has to speak louder than the noise, and with Lamb, it always does. So, I will leave it at this. CeeDee Lamb does not need Pacman's approval. He does not need a podcast take to validate what he already showed us on the field. The stats are there, the accolades are there, and the tape does not lie. If anything, this whole controversy just reminded everybody why Lamb has that chip on his shoulder, and honestly, that is a scary thing for the rest of the NFC East to deal with this season. Lamb has heard doubt before, he has heard people question him before, and every single time, he has answered it the only way that actually matters, which is on the football field. Alright guys, that is going to do it for this one. Let me know down in the comments what you think about this whole situation, and whether you think Pacman was out of line with those comments. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss any of our Cowboys coverage, and I will catch you in the next one.